Late August. Seed packets are spread across the patio table. You circle your first frost date and start counting backward. That calendar can set up 9 fall crops that spend winter taking care of themselves once they are established. Some sit underground. Others keep leaves ready to pick. Do that work now, and winter weekends stay off the garden chore list. 2 things on this list cannot wait as long as the word fall suggests. So if you are planting today, start with those. Number 4 handles the germination problem that can end a fall carrot planting before anything breaks the soil. The other one needs the longest head start of anything on this list, and one detail on the seed packet decides whether it comes up at all. Tell me your zone below, because a Zone 5 deadline and a Zone 8 deadline are not the same calendar. Number 1. Garlic. Garlic is the one crop on this list that actually wants you to leave it alone. The less you touch it between now and July, the better it does. If you've been planting garlic in spring and wondering why the bulbs come out the size of a shallot, this is why. I ran through every excuse before I found the real one. Wrong soil, I figured. Maybe not enough sun. Then I blamed the water for a while too. None of it. Nearest one real winter. I dug up my first spring-planted batch, expecting a full head, and found what looked like an oversized shallot staring back at me. Here's the part most seed racks never mention. A garlic clove is not just sitting in the dirt waiting to grow. It reads the cold. Enough weeks below 40 degrees, and something inside that clove flips a switch, splitting into separate cloves instead of staying one solid mass. Skip that cold stretch. Plant in spring instead, and the clove stays lazy. It never gets the signal to divide. You end up with one round bulb you cannot break apart at the counter, no matter how good your soil is or how much you water. That switch flips once, underground, out of sight, all winter long. Music is the variety for this if you want it to work without babysitting. Hardneck, porcelain type, hardy from Zone 3 clear through Zone 8, and reliable enough that most northern growers reach for it first. Push each clove 3 inches deep, pointed end up, spaced 6 to 8 inches apart. Time it 6 to 8 weeks before your ground actually freezes solid, going by your own soil. Not a date on the calendar. Mulch 4 to 6 inches of straw the same day you plant, and that is the last time your hands touch this bed until July. Roast a whole head alongside anything in the oven, or mince it straight into oil for the base of dinner. Gardening in Zone 9 or 10 changes the math. Winters there rarely get cold enough for hardneck to vernalize properly. Grab a softneck variety instead, or chill your cloves in the refrigerator for 6 to 8 weeks before planting. One cold winter does the dividing for you. You just have to get out of the way. Number 2. Leeks. Everyone assumes leeks need constant hilling and babysitting. The winter hardy ones don't need any of that. They just stand there. You walk out in January, snow on the ground, and pull one leek exactly like it's August. No cover pulled back, no soil mounded up that week, nothing. It's been standing in that same spot since September. I used to babysit leeks until I found the ones that don't need it. Here's what the how-to guides skip over. That constant hilling advice is real, but it belongs to a different leek than the one you want for winter. Summer leeks grow tall and thin, with pale green leaves that give the cold plenty of surface area to attack. Winter varieties grow short and thick instead, wrapped in leaves with a bluish wax coating that seals in heat the way a good coat seals in yours. Less leaf hanging out in the wind, more wax holding the heat in. The plant is not tougher. It is just built differently from the ground up, and no amount of hilling changes what variety you started with. That difference in build, not your technique, decides whether a leek survives January. American Flag and Blue Soleils are the 2 to plant for this. Both hold through winter into an early spring harvest. And gardeners have kept growing them through winters where the thermometer sits in the low teens with no row cover at all. King Richard is the leek to skip for this purpose. It matures fast for summer and fall eating, has that thin, pale build, and was never bred to take a real freeze. Plant it and you will be digging up mush by December. Days to maturity run 70 to 120, depending on which one you pick. So put transplants in the ground in late summer and just let them sit until you need one. Slice the white and light green parts into soup or sauté them low and slow anywhere a recipe calls for onion. Zone 5 and colder is where you still need to help a little. Hill soil around the base or throw down mulch before the ground locks up, so the roots survive the freeze-thaw cycles that come with a real northern winter. That's the whole fix. Pick the right leek, not the right technique. Number 3. Bunching onions. This is the fastest payoff on the whole list, and it's the one gardeners forget to plant heading into fall. Every bunch of scallions at the store is $1 or $2 you didn't need to spend. 60 to 75 days from seed to a usable bunch, faster than anything else on this list by a wide margin. Plant it now and you're cutting fresh scallions before most of the other 8 entries have even sized up. Evergreen Hardy White is the variety built for this. It's a clumping onion, not a bulbing one, so there's no round onion forming underground to freeze and rot. The tops can die back completely in a hard freeze, and the plant just regrows from the base once things warm up. Gardeners in Zone 3 and colder have kept clumps of this going for generations with nothing more than a thick layer of mulch laid down before the ground locks up. Zero maintenance beyond that one layer of straw. Cut what you need, leave the roots in the ground, and it grows back for another cut. Toss it into eggs, soup, a stir-fry, anything that ever called for a green onion. No separate recipe required. Colder than Zone 4. Don't skip the mulch. Pile it on thick before the first hard freeze, or the clumps can struggle to bounce back once spring hits. Cut it, forget it, cut it again in March. Number 4. Carrots. This is it, the one that fixes the mistake behind almost every "why won't my carrot sprout" question out there. The real cause hides in the 14 days right after you drop the seed, not in which variety you picked or what your soil looks like. The first time I sowed carrots for a fall crop, I did what every packet told me, raked the bed smooth, dropped the seed, watered it once, deep and thorough. Then I walked away for a week, figuring seed in the ground meant the job was done. 8 days later I came back to check. The top inch of soil had cracked into little plates, dry as a cracker. I dug through 3 feet of row and found exactly nothing, not one seedling. This never makes it past the headline. A carrot seed is barely bigger than a period on this page, sitting just a 1/4 inch under the surface. That top layer of soil dries out in a few hours of sun, whether you watered yesterday or not. One deep soak doesn't carry a seed that shallow through a whole week. It carries it through an afternoon. The seed swells, starts to crack, and then the moisture around it disappears before it can finish the job. It just sits there, half-started, and dies in the ground. Skip the hose and forget approach entirely. For the first 10 to 14 days, that soil needs to stay damp. Even if that means a light pass with the hose every single day, morning or evening, whichever you'll actually remember to do. Once it's up and growing, the reward comes later. A hard frost turns the starch in that root into sugar, so the carrots you pull in December taste sweeter than anything you harvested in September. Knot types, something like Napoli, hold that sweetness best and take the cold without turning woody. That's the group to plant if this bed is staying in the ground past the first frost. It works from Zone 4 up through Zone 9, though how much mulch you need depends on how far you are from the coast or the mountains. So 10 to 12 weeks before your average first frost date. Count back from frost, not forward from Labor Day. Keep the row damp until you see feathery green tops poking through, then let up. Once the plants are established, Mulch 6 to 8 inches of straw or shredded leaves over the row before the ground goes hard. And you'll be pulling carrots out of soft dirt clear into December, maybe January. Pull them straight into a roasting pan, or grate a few raw into a salad. Heavy clay that hasn't been worked at least 10 to 12 inches deep will still give you forked, twisted roots no matter how perfect your timing is. Break that soil up first. Get the water right for 2 weeks, and the rest of the season takes care of itself. If that carrot timing trick just saved you from another failed germination this fall, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. There's a new one of these every week. But the next plant on this list is one gardeners usually grow just for the colors on the seed packet. Turns out it's tougher than half of what's already on here. Number 5. Swiss Chard. This is the one gardeners usually plant for the colors on the seed packet, not realizing it's tougher than half the vegetables on this list. That chard you planted for the colors? It'll outlast your kale in a light winter. The leaves take a frost and keep going. Cut them at the base and the plant just sends up more from the crown. Week after week, all the way into the cold months. The reason comes down to something simple. The crown and roots sitting underground shrug off cold that would flatten the leaves above them. Even if a hard frost knocks the top growth back to mush, the plant is not dead. It is sitting there, alive at the base, ready to push out fresh leaves the second temperatures climb back up. Once you see that, the rest makes sense. That crown just keeps restocking itself with fresh leaves for as long as the roots stay alive underground. Ford Hook Giant or Bright Lights are the familiar names off any seed rack, and both hold up fine here. 50 to 70 days to maturity, and you can sow this one a little later than your kale or collards without losing much. In zone 7 or 8 with a heavy mulch, this plant can carry you clear through winter. Zone 6 and colder, treat it as a fall and early winter crop instead, not a true overwinterer. Strip the leaves off the stem and wilt them into eggs, soup, or a quick sauté with garlic. Below 15 degrees with nothing covering it, chard dies outright. Add a row cover if you're gardening colder than zone 6 and want it to hang on longer. Zero maintenance, as long as the thermometer cooperates. Number 6. Collards. Put collards next to kale in the same bed after a hard frost and you'll see the difference immediately. Just not the one you'd expect. A lot of southern gardeners have grown up on collards after frost without ever knowing why they taste better. You know why now, especially if you caught the earlier entries on this list. Cold pushes the starch in those leaves toward sugar. The same trick every other crop on here pulls off. This isn't a kale exclusive. Collards do it too, and the big, broad leaves hold up to a skillet of oil and garlic, or a pot simmered low the way southern kitchens have always done it. Where collards actually sit on the cold scale surprises people. I ran collards next to kale, and the gap wasn't what I expected. Normal conditions, collards shrug off temperatures down to about 20 degrees without a fight. Push it further, and certain cultivars, like Morris Heading, have survived a single night down near 10 degrees in real backyard conditions. Kale, when we get to it later, beats that by roughly 10 degrees at the coldest extreme. But collards pay you back with fewer pest problems and leaves nearly twice the size, which matters plenty when you're feeding a table off one row. Georgia Southern matures in 50 to 80 days. Vates runs closer to 65 and resists bolting better. A real plus if your falls tend to swing warm before they turn cold. Zone 8 through 10. Collards overwinter reliably. Colder than that, you might get lucky through a mild winter, but don't count on it. Time your sowing so the plant reaches full size right around your first frost, giving the leaves 1 or 2 light freezes before you start cutting. That first post-frost harvest is the one to save for a proper pot of greens, not the earlier growth. A sudden deep cold snap after an unusually warm stretch can still kill collards even above 20 degrees, since the plant never got the chance to toughen up first. Tougher than most greens, sweeter than people expect, not complicated, just overlooked. Stick around, because 2 entries from now is the one that never shows up in these lists, and almost nobody actually grows it. Number 7. Spinach. Reframe this one right now. Spinach is not the fragile salad green from the store. It's one of the toughest things you can put in the ground. You harvest a frozen leaf in January, thinking it's ruined, and by noon it's back on your cutting board like nothing happened. That limp, wilted image you're picturing comes from a plastic bag on a grocery shelf, not from a plant that's actually rooted in your yard. I used to write spinach off as a weak crop until I saw this happen in my own bed. This is biology, not luck. A 38 leaf can freeze solid overnight and thaw back out the next afternoon without dying, as long as the cold snap doesn't drag on for days at a time. The leaf cells are built to handle that freeze-thaw cycle. Once the plant is established, it shrugs off 15 to 20 degrees with zero cover. That's the same starch-to-sugar trick you saw with the carrots and the collards, just running in a leaf instead of a root, which is why winter spinach tastes sweeter and less bitter than anything you grew in July. Bloomsdale Long Standing is the variety to reach for. It's a cold, hardy classic that's been in gardens since the 1920s, and it holds up in zones 6 through 9 without much fuss. Colder than that, a decent layer of mulch still gets you there most winters. Sow this 6 to 8 weeks before your first frost, no later. That window matters more than the variety you pick. A young seedling with just a couple of true leaves has none of that cold tolerance yet. Wait too long to sow, and you lose the toughness before winter even shows up. Get it in the ground on time, and the plant does the rest on its own. Pull leaves straight into a skillet with a little butter and garlic, or toss them raw into whatever soup is already on the stove. No special recipe needed, just the same spinach you already know how to cook. That's the shift. Stop treating it like lettuce. It isn't. We've covered 7 of these, but the one nobody could ever name until now is still ahead. Number 8. Parsnips. Here it is, the one from the top of this video that neither of the 2 original videos ever mentioned. The one everybody keeps asking about without knowing its name. Leave a parsnip in the ground through 2 hard frosts, then pull it in December, and it tastes almost like candy compared to the same root dug up in October. There's a trick that gets passed around by old-timers, and neither of those 2 viral videos ever mentioned it. Buy a fresh packet of parsnip seed every single year. Don't touch the leftover packet from last spring. I used the same packet 2 years running once, telling myself the soil must be off or the timing was wrong. A friend of mine who's been gardening the same plot for 3 decades finally set me straight. She had listened to me complain about patchy rows for 2 summers before she asked to see the seed packet. One look at the date on it and she just laughed. The piece that most guides leave out is sitting right in the seed packet. Nobody ever puts these 2 things together. A parsnip seed is thin and nearly naked compared to most vegetable seeds, without much of the natural oil coating that keeps seeds like carrot or beet stable in storage. That seed keeps breathing inside the packet, burning through its own reserves, and by the 2nd season it's running on fumes. Plant it anyway, and half the row never comes up. Gardeners usually blame the soil or blame their timing when a row comes up patchy like that. The real problem is almost always sitting in the seed packet itself, a shelf life issue hiding inside something that looks perfectly fine. Buy fresh seed every single year, full stop, and skip whatever's left in the drawer from last spring. The sweetening itself works the same way you've seen elsewhere on this list, just turned up further. The ground needs to sit somewhere between 32 and 40 degrees for 2 to 4 weeks straight, converting starch into sugar the whole time. The colder and longer that stretch runs, the sweeter the root gets, more than anything else you've planted this fall. Hollow Crown is the variety to grow. It's an heirloom that's been in gardens for more than 50 years, with roots that push a foot down into loose soil. It grows across zone 3 through 9. Whether you can leave it in the ground all winter depends less on your zone number and more on whether your ground actually freezes solid or stays workable with a shovel. Sow it direct into the ground. Parsnips hate being transplanted. Thin seedlings to 3 to 4 inches apart once they're up, and expect 100 to 130 days before the roots are ready to pull. If you want to dig a little at a time all winter instead of harvesting everything at once, mulch 6 inches or more of straw over the row before the ground locks up hard. Once you pull one, roast it whole alongside whatever else is in the pan, or boil and mash it the way you would a potato. It doesn't ask for a special recipe, just a hungrier appetite than you'd expect from a root that sits ignored in the produce aisle. This one needs a long season to work. Sow later than midsummer, and the roots won't size up before the cold arrives to do its sweetening work. The star of this list isn't the crop, it's the seed packet nobody thought to replace. Number 9. Kale. Last one on the list, and it's the one that earns the word bulletproof better than anything else here. This is the final piece of what this whole list promised. Plant it once, forget it, and still have something fresh to pull out of a snowstorm. The bagged kale at the store gets sad and pricey the second the weather turns. A single bed of your own replaces almost all of that need, all winter long. If I could only pick one crop from this whole list to keep growing year after year, this would be it. A woman who watches from Newfoundland wrote to me about her kale bed. She'd strung a few old strands of Christmas lights along the row for a little extra warmth on the coldest nights, the kind where the temperature drops past 4 below zero. She kept pulling leaves off that same bed through the entire snow season, right alongside a row of knot carrots doing the same thing 3 feet away. Winterbor and Red Russian are the two to plant. Winterbor is the curly type and the toughest of the two, handling 0 to 10 degrees depending on how it's grown. Red Russian, the oak leaf type, holds up to 14 degrees under a cold frame or hoop house. Mature plants of either one generally shrug off temperatures down to at least 10 degrees with no cover at all. Sowing early matters more than which variety you pick. Get your seed in 10 to 12 weeks before your first hard frost, and the plant reaches full size before the real cold arrives. Get it in late, and you end up with a small, half-grown kale plant that dies at a temperature a mature one would laugh off. Same starch-to-sugar trick you already know from the Collards kicks in here too, so the leaves you pull in January taste better than anything you cut in September. Zone 6 through 9 is where this holds up on its own. Zone 4 and 5 still work fine with a light mulch or row cover over the bed. Pull a handful of leaves anytime you need them, whether that's stripping the ribs and throwing them into a soup pot, sautéing them with garlic and a little oil, or massaging the raw leaves into a salad. No special recipe required, just whatever you were already cooking that night. This timing rule doesn't bend for zone. Whether you're in Zone 4 or Zone 9, a seedling sown too close to that first hard frost never reaches the size it needs, no matter how cold-hardy the variety promises to be on the seed packet. 9 crops, 1 afternoon of planting, and a kale bed still standing in a Newfoundland snowstorm. That's the whole point of this list. 9 crops, 1 planting session between now and the first hard frost, and a garden that keeps feeding you from October straight through March without you touching it again. Garlic and leeks doing nothing but waiting underground, carrots and parsnips getting sweeter the colder it gets, kale still standing after a Newfoundland snowstorm. That's the whole system. Plant it once and let winter do the rest of the work. One more thing before the calendar. Use dry straw or shredded dry leaves for mulch, not fresh green leaves or grass clippings. Wet material mats down, blocks air, and can rot the crowns of these plants before the ground even freezes. 4 to 6 inches of dry straw is the difference between a bed that heaves apart in a freeze-thaw cycle and one that doesn't. So here's what to do next. This afternoon, before you do anything else in the yard, look up your average first frost date and count back 90 days on the calendar. Circle that date. That's your hard deadline for getting carrot and parsnip seeds straight into the ground. No starting trays, no do-overs. Tell me which of these 9 you're trying first this week. I read every comment, and it's exactly how I decide what to cover next. The grocery store wants you back every week all winter. Your garden just wants one afternoon in September.